In the previous section, we have seen about using the events with parameters, working with events, that too with parameters and without parameters. In the class-based component, that is the earlier version of React, if you want to have a state at a component level, you can have only one level of state. A state used to be an object literal. So in a class-based component, you can have only one state. But for example, in this particular code, if you want to have more states, then you can easily take by using the useState hook. Let's try that. For example, I just want to try now a different type of state. That is, I'm going to try a Boolean value with the useState. For example, I'm going to say const, that is, let's say mFlag. This is going to contain a Boolean value, and I just say set flag. Let me say set flag, and here when I use the useState, if I say true, that means the mFlag becomes a state containing initial value true. So the way I have used useState 2 times, you can use it multiple times. You can also have an object literal that we will see after some time. So right now, for example, I want to display this value of mFlag here. I'll take an h3. Here I'm going to say mFlag, and the h3 ends. Now you do not see the value right now. The reason is that we have a Boolean value. So either we convert this into a string, so I will say toString, which is a method to convert a value into string, or you can just use a plus sign and join it. We'll keep toString at the moment. Now let's say we try something else as well. I'll take a button where I'll say that this is going to toggle the value of the flag. So on click of a button, I just want that this true becomes false, and if it is false, it should become true. So it's going to toggle the value. Right now we have used a separate function, that is the counter handler, to execute the setter method, that is the set count. You see that here, the setter method. Now the set flag is the setter method for the flag. So now I'm going to try a different way of calling the same method, that is the setter method. Here I'm not going to create a separate handler. I'll say on click is equal to. Now there will be an arrow function here and also the set flag. Inside this, what I want is that the mFlag, whatever the value is, just reverse it. So when I say exclamation, that means if it is true, it will make it false. If it is false, it will make it true. Also, I'm using the set flag, which has a parameter, and I've already discussed in the previous section that we use the arrow function to return this function. We use the arrow function when we have the parameter to be passed so that it doesn't execute on load. Now let's try this. I'll just click on the toggle. It was earlier true, so now it is false. Again I toggle, it says true. So this particular example, I'm trying to explain that we can have multiple states. Not only that, let's say if I want to use a pattern which was used with class-based component, that is, instead of having different values, if I want to have an object literal, let's say both these states which I have here, that is counter and mFlag, I want to keep it in an object literal, then I can use one state and do it. Let me convert that also. Here what will I do? I'll use the object literal. Let's say I'll take a counter inside this and I'll say 0, comma. I'm going to take the mFlag inside this and that I will make it true. The next thing is this particular useState hook is going to return now an object literal. So the CNT will be a kind of object. Let me just say that it is a state object. So I'll say SOBJ. So now SOBJ has CNT and mFlag. And of course, I'm going to remove this. I don't need the second useState. Now let's just first of all display the value. So here, instead of writing CNT, I should write SOBJ.CNT. And when it comes to flag, I'll say SOBJ.mFlag.toString. So now we have these two values. You can see that they are getting displayed without any trouble. So now the states are defined inside an object literal. So there is one state only, that is the object literal, which has these members. Now comes the important part. The set count is the setter method for both CNT and mFlag now. We can change the name, we can make it more meaningful, but at the moment let's keep it set count as it is. The next thing is that when it comes to changing the individual member, that is CNT or mFlag, because it is an object literal, we'll have to write an object literal here as well. So for example, I give an object literal, and because it is an object literal, I'm going to say that CNT is equal to, that is a colon sign, and there will be a value which is always incremented. Now what I can do, either I can take a separate variable or I can write here also. I can say sobj.cnt plus 1. The left hand side is the member of the object literal. So here you do not have to say sobj.cnt. It automatically recognizes because it is the use state which returned the setter method and it has a reference of object literal. So you just write CNT or mFlag. You will not write sobj.cnt. On the right hand side, if you want to refer any value, be it a variable or even the counter or flag, you will write sobj, because right hand side is the value which you are going to assign. So I will take a variable, let's say a temporary counter, and that I will assign with the sobj.cnt. So whatever the value the counter has, that is assigned to the temporary counter, and then I will say temporary counter plus plus, and here in this case the counter is going to be the temporary counter. That's it. Similar pattern applies here also. So for the else section, I'm going to say temporary counter minus minus, and there will be an object literal here where I say CNT is equal to temporary counter. Now the next thing is also changing this set flag. We do not have anything called set flag. We can use the counter handler only directly, or we can set it inside this on-click event, that is with inline way only. I can simply write set count, right? And as I mentioned that we'll need an object literal. So let's put an object literal around this. And here mFlag will be sobj.mFlag. This is a new value, and this is the member of the object literal. So if I now click, you see it is working absolutely the way we are expecting. But when I click on this toggle button, the value does change for the flag, but the counter is disappeared. Same is the case with if I click on these buttons, then it is giving me the problem with the mFlag. That means when the set count or the setter method is executed, there is some problem. To see the problem, let's first of all add a line here. I'm going to say json.stringify, and I want to display the value of sobj. Now initially when the page loaded, counter and mFlag both are displayed. The moment I click on, let's say, this toggle, you see that there is only one mFlag displayed. There is only one member. The counter is gone. So when you try to call the setter method, it resets this value only. So you have to inform the setter method that whatever is there inside the sobj, let it be as it is, whatever members you have, and at the same time then you replace the value of mFlag with the new value. So now if I just refresh, we have counter and mFlag. Now when I click toggle, you see counter is still existing and it is not disappeared. So to resolve this counter issue, we are still going to do the same thing here, that we'll make sure we use the spread operator. I'll say sobj. Let the object be first as it is, and then override this counter value with the new value. So in this case also we are going to say sobj and the counter. Now I'll just refresh. Now let's run the code. I'll say plus minus, you have the toggle value. So in this section we have seen that we can take multiple states. We have also seen that we can have an object literal inside the useState hook. So now let's talk about relative questions. The first question is, if this is the statement, then what will be the output? So here we are trying to display the Boolean value, and if you try to display it, it won't be, because the Boolean value inside JSX needs to be converted into string. So the core type needs to be converted into string, and for that we tried this where we added the toString function. So if you just say mflag, there will not be any output. The second question is, how will you reverse a Boolean state on click of a button? So now this is a kind of exercise which you have to do, a kind of program which you have, small program which you have to do, where you can write the code in this way. You have a Boolean state, and on click of a button, you have the setter function where you just give the exclamation and the state name. So whatever is the value, it's going to reverse and it's going to update the state. So naturally that will be rendered on the screen. The third question is, how will you update an object state in a functional component? So as I have already displayed in a small exercise here, that when we were trying to change only mFlag, it was giving the problem with the counter, and if we tried to change the counter, it gave us the problem with the flag. The reason is the object contains these two, that is the counter and the flag. So you have to make sure that whenever you update the object, first of all you use the spread operator and give the object. So whatever states are there, they are going to be part of the object, and then you update the value of selected state value. Like here we tried the mFlag with this syntax, and here we tried the counter with spread operator and the new value of the counter.